I'm all ears.
I'm all ears.
I'm all ears.
Lend me your ears.
I'm all ears.
Listen well.
I have a word with I'm all ears.
I'm all ears.
I'm all ears.
I'm all ears.
You had a great fucking battle last night.
Yeah.
Look, all credit to, I don't think he'll give a shit if I say his name and this gets added. All credit to Nate Welch. I thought the judging was a little wonky on that one. It was you're kind of like out of retirement battle, yeah?
Yeah, so, I mean, the retirement thing was like, I haven't done a new battle in the belly room in like 4 years.
Okay.
But I've done others. I've done a few rematches. Last second, somebody drops out. You know, we battled somewhere else. We throw it together. I battled at Jam in the Van. I battled in Tokyo last year.
Wow.
I've done battles, but this was the first one, like traditional kind of sense. Yeah, first time we're battling, and it's
The
in
first,
the belly
like,
room. Yeah.
the agreement, the meetup, the info exchange.
For sure. Yeah.
And it was a fucking killer battle.
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, honestly, like, I couldn't even tell you about the judging because I'm at a point now where that was my 48th battle.
That's insane.
Which is nuts. So, like, when I'm on stage, I'm never anymore judging how the battle is going, like me versus my opponent. It's always me versus, like, my past battles. You know what I mean?
Just judging your own performance.
Exactly. And I was semi-satisfied with it. You know, I thought that I could have done a couple things differently, but overall, it seems solid. People seem to have fun with it.
I was really shocked at the outcome of it because, I mean, it was like watching somebody just get peppered with shots. Like, you were just pummeling Nate. He had a couple big pops. The provolone joke I thought was really funny.
Great joke.
And then the strip club joke was very good, and it was very underrated. And I think it took Omid Singh saying, like, "Come on, guys, did you not hear that joke?" For the audience,
it took me a minute. I didn't get it at first.
It took me, I think, until Omid said it. Then I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah,
strip club, Raising Cane's, got it.
Chicken strips, yeah.
But yeah, good on Nate. I thought I would have had it the other way around.
Well, I appreciate
not
that.
to stroke your ego, but
ultimately it doesn't matter.
It
right?
It's about putting on a good show.
It's great for Nate, and he's been on a roll. I was happy to battle him, and I know that's a big deal for him to even forget the wins and losses, just to get up and have a good battle like that. But I think that's one of the cool things about us releasing all the content online now. Like when I first started, we were barely recording anything. So a win was a win, a loss was a loss, and you could sit there crying about like, oh yeah, I got robbed. Nobody knows or cares.
Who gives a shit?
We'll put it out online. It was a styles clash, right? Nate does one thing, I do a different thing.
Yeah.
And I think you'll have a lot of support for both. I think there will be people who will be like, oh yeah, Pat should have won, and there will be people who are like, oh, Nate fucking crushed him. I'm expecting both, and that's cool.
That'll be fun to see. All right, guys, my guest today. You are a hilarious comic. You are a loving father. I've done a deep dive on your Instagram. And you are the commissioner of the Roast Battle League at the Comedy Store, at Comedy Works in Denver, the Mothership in Austin. You guys are in Tokyo. Where else are you guys at?
We're in 12 cities right now. Right now we have 6 in the States, which is LA, the Bay Area, New York, Chicago, Denver, and Austin. And then we have 6 international, which is London, Tokyo, Toronto, Barcelona, Scotland, and Australia.
My God.
And next month we'll be expanding from 12 to 16. We're going to be adding 2 more in the States and 2 more overseas.
Jesus Christ. Okay. So for people who don't know what Roast Battle is, how would you, as the head of Roast Battle, how would you describe it to somebody who's never heard it?
I mean, the elevator pitch is, it's real simple. You get 2 comedians. If you've ever seen a Comedy Central roast, you know the style of jokes that you write, and you just basically have a head-to-head battle. It's like a hybrid of stand-up comedy and like rap battles or whatever. I think that's the general overview of it. I like the fact that it is, we used to tout it as the joke writer's showcase, which I think is really accurate. It's a good opportunity for comics to kind of like flex their muscles and show that they can write jokes. It's very similar to what you do working on a TV show.
Yeah.
Like you have a deadline, you have a specific thing you have to write about, you got to step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. But it's also just like a really good like camaraderie bonding kind of, thing. I feel like the community in the roast world for whatever reason is like a little bit tighter.
Yeah, 100%. You get like there's almost like a group of comics who only do roast battle.
Yeah.
A little bit. They don't really do stand up outside of that.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit weird, but it is a cool little niche community. Also, I don't think I said your name. Pat Barker is the guest today. Pat Barker. We got into roast battle Commish, and I went on a roll.
All good.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So roast battle is its own very unique thing. It started in the belly room of the Comedy Store, which is the small room at the Comedy Store, if anybody's ever heard of it. And now you guys have expanded to all these crazy places. How did you get involved with roast battle, and how has it grown into what it is today?
So it started in 2013. I got on board the next year, 2014. Basically, I moved out to LA later in life.
Where are you from?
Philly.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Provolone.
Provolone, yeah. So I moved out to LA later in life by like Hollywood standards, right? Like you want to be out here when you're like 20. So you can fucking hashtag grind.
Yep.
And everything like that. I started stand up in Philly. I did it there for 9 years. And then I moved when I was 30, which again, by LA standards is ancient, right?
I don't think I got started in comedy until I was 28.
Okay.
Like stand-up wise.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I was doing improv in the Groundlings and shit for a little while. I had dabbled in an open mic or a show here and there, but it was like once every 6 months or a year.
Right.
I don't feel like I really got started doing stand-up till about 2018.
Wow.
But yeah,
okay.
a couple late bloomers here.
Yeah. I mean,
you were doing it though, but
I was doing it, and I was like a road feature. I had a half hour I loved. I just recorded like my first album. I could do an hour, like, and it was actually Bert Kreischer of all people. I featured for him, and then a year later I featured for him again at Helium, which is like the main club in Philly, and he remembered me from the year before. And at the end of the week, after the last show, he hung out with all the fans and everything. He's fucking hammered. He's not wearing a shirt. He's totally Bert. And he just pulls me aside and he's just like, you got to get the fuck out of Philadelphia. Because we had talked about it a little bit, and he had just sort of like been asking like, why, like, what are you doing here? And like, I had a full-time job. I was managing a CVS, making pretty good money.
No fucking way.
Yeah, dude.
Dude, I worked at CVS for 4 years.
No shit.
From 18 to 24. I will wake up in a bad mood from having a nightmare that I had to go back to work at a CVS.
Well, the best part is now, because they're firing all the employees and replacing them with like self-checkouts. Like I'm a pretty I pride myself on being honest and like a moral kind of person. Like that's big for me. And for some reason, I feel nothing bad when I forget to ring something up for myself at CVS. I'm like, this is for all the years I worked 70 hours and got paid for 45.
This is for fucking Tom. What was that guy's name? The CEO.
Oh yeah, the CEO. I've blocked that out.
There was always like newsletters like, Tom wants to let you guys know this. I was the same way. I take a moral high ground on a lot of things, but I do like to brag about how many things I stole during my time working at CVS. My favorite one was I stole a fucking knee brace.
Oh hell yeah!
Middle of my shift, I had hurt my knee snowboarding the day before, and I was having trouble walking. And I was like, well, if you guys want me to work during this, and I went to the little medical aisle, pulled one off the shelf, went to the back room, and put a knee brace on, and never paid for it.
It would be funnier if you didn't need a knee brace. You were just doing it out of principle. Like my knee's fine. I just fuck these guys.
Yeah,
because they're charging like $30 for like these little sleeves. The whole thing's a racket. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I had this full-time job. I was living, comfortably. I was making pretty good money. And I was, I guess, scared to kind of I was like, there's only 3 steps on the Philly comedy ladder, like open mic, and then you're hosting, and then you're featuring. Like when I started, there was like one club. So I had worked my way up to feature. I had worked with every big name that had come through. I had opened for, Bill Burr and Greg Giraldo and Kreischer a couple times, and fucking, Paul Mooney, everybody.
That's a who's who.
So in a way, it's a really sweet gig to have.
Yeah.
But you kind of look ahead and you're like, well, if I don't leave, this is untenable. I can't just do this forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this was
scary
pre-podcast era where like now people can blow up anywhere with podcasts.
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's a scary leap though, because in a way you're kind of a made man in Philly.
Yeah.
And now you become big fish, small pond, move out to LA, regular sized fish, big ass fucking pond.
Yeah, the biggest.
Yeah.
It was scarier to not do it.
Okay.
Ultimately, the thing, I knew that if I moved out to LA and failed, I would feel better about that than just staying in Philly and succeeding.
I like that. That's nice.
And I knew that LA had to be the place because I had so many friends. We were 2 hours from New York.
Yeah.
there were so many of my friends who would move to New York, and we would, throw a going away party. It's like, damn, dude, you're a New York comic now. Look at you.
Yeah.
You're going to, and then what would happen is you move up to New York, small fish, big pond. You're not getting the stage time you want, but you're still getting the calls. Hey, can you come down and we'll pay you $60 to do Doylestown or like these little suburbs of Philly.
Yeah.
So they would
end up just getting
move,
pulled
and then
back.
every weekend you would still see them. And it's like they went from being Philly comics to still being Philly comics with New York rent prices, and you know what I mean?
Gotcha. I was about to ask why LA and not New York, but I guess like you saw it first.
That was the main reason. I was like, if I go out to LA, I will succeed or fail. No safety net. I'm not going to fly back to make $100 on a gig. I'm just going to throw myself in the deepest end of the pool and see what the fuck happens. And not to mention, LA is more my speed. I like LA. Like, I love living here. The weather, New York is just too busy, too hectic, too many people everywhere. I get claustrophobic. They pride themselves on being assholes, whereas LA, everybody hides that, which I prefer. So just me personally,
Yeah.
I like living in LA,
Grass is
so that
always
helped
greener.
too.
It's funny. I'm from Southern California. I'm from LA County, and I love the East Coast.
Sure.
I've never been. Well, I shouldn't even say the East Coast. I like cold weather climates. I love Chicago, is what I should say.
Oh.
I love Big Bear, which is still a Southern California thing. But like, I've never actually been to New York. But everybody tells me that would be so much more my speed.
Mm-hmm.
I do hate New Yorkers, or East Coasters, but it's mostly a sports thing.
Yeah, I get that.
Especially you being a Philly guy.
I get that, yeah.
I can't hear "Go Birds" one more fucking time.
Well, there's not much to be happy about right now.
Yeah,
it's
luckily.
a rough time.
And the Flyers are about to have it pretty rough too.
I mean, I'm 40. I've seen like 2 championships in my whole life out of 4 sports. Like it's been a rough 4 decades.
But they're still the number one in their minds. But anyway, but yeah, the grass is always greener. We're glad to have you in LA. So what happens when you get out here?
Yeah, so I moved out here and immediately I was failing because I was going from regularly doing a half hour, in front of 200 people
To 3 minutes.
to 3 minutes in front of other comics. And I was so naive. I was like, I'll just go out there and I'll just be myself. I know I'm a good comic and the cream will rise to the top because that's how it happened in Philly.
Right.
And then you get out to LA and you're like, oh, this is so
Nobody
much.
gives a fucking shit.
Nobody
about you.
cares. And in Philly, you would do an open mic at the club, there'd be 50 like paid audience members there. And in LA, it was just, I was doing 3 minutes in front of other comics. I had built up my half hour. I'm more of a storyteller anyway. So I'd be like halfway through my setup and I'd get the light and I'm just like, oh my God, what the fuck?
Dude.
So I was failing. And then a friend told me about a year in about this roast battle. And I went to the Comedy Store and I watched, and it was completely sold out. It was the craziest energy I'd ever seen on a show. I went back a couple weeks later. They always had the biggest celebrity judges. And it was just the craziest show. And I was like, oh, you probably have to, because I was trying to get in at the other shows too. People were like, oh yeah, this is a good show, that's a good show. And I would send an email and they would be like, yeah, just come hang out for like a couple years and then we'll book you, or like send a tape and then you get no response. So I'm like, oh, getting on Roast Battle must be impossible. And then I found out they'll book literally like anybody.
We saw last night, outside of your guys' battle, you guys will book fucking anybody.
Which is a gift and a curse.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that I love about it.
It is
Because
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
The thing I love about it is in a city and a business where nothing seems to be based exclusively on talent and skill, it's a true meritocracy.
Yeah.
It really is. We're rewarding, and that's what I like about being commissioner too, like being able to book the mothership down in Austin and things like that, to give opportunities to comics who truly deserve them based on the work they're doing. Not how many followers they have, not, who they're friends with. We don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Like, can you write jokes? And that's what I loved, because I needed that energy from the crowd that I had been without for a year doing these mics. And I was like, I will gladly sit down and write roast jokes and get up here and do it and prove that I can do this thing just in exchange for that energy.
Right.
So I fell in love with it kind of like right away.
Who was your first battle?
This guy named Rob Lewis. So Rob,
I think I remember him.
Rob was a guy I had briefly known in Philly. And truth be told, I didn't know Rob that well. I never had any negative interactions with him. But there was an entire comedy forum, like a private comedy forum that about a year prior had devolved into just making fun of Rob Lewis. Like, it just became like a group chat for like sharing his statuses and being like, what a fucking... and he was an interesting guy. He left himself open to a lot of that kind of like mockery. White guy.
Okay.
But like he worked part-time at a comedy club, a now defunct comedy club.
Which one?
It was called the J Spot.
The Black Room?
Yeah. Over by the airport.
I know. I never saw it because I came later, but I've heard about it.
Yeah.
It's like out by Hawthorne or some shit, right?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere towards the airport. Okay. And he was like a server. And every now and then they would have to fill some time. So they would be like, do you want to go up and do 5 minutes? So he would go up and do time. I have no idea how it went, but then he would get paid. But he would get paid like a comical amount of money, like $10 or something.
Yeah.
Which like we've all been comics. We've all worked for mozzarella sticks, like drink tickets.
Yep.
$10 is nothing to sneeze at. But then he would unironically take a picture of him holding up 2 $5 bills and be like, I got paid to do comedy tonight. Like, but not even in a mocking, like he genuinely was like flexing.
I mean, bless his heart,
For sure.
But it is fucking hilarious.
So what happened was I had been going to Roast Battle and I loved the show, but I was so in my own head about like, I could never get on this show. I could never do this, right? And then one week I went and Rob Lewis was battling. And I'm just like, how the fuck did he get on? So he battled a comic named Jamario McLean, and they did an undercard, 3 jokes, and just ate shit the entire way through. Both of them. It was Rob's first battle. Mm-hmm. The only pop at all, Rob had some sort of rebuttal because he's from Connecticut, and then he was like, oh, the only reason he hates Connecticut is because he doesn't know how to spell it. And like 3 people were like, ha ha. So then they come down to vote, and Moses is like, all right, Jesus Christ, who do you guys like, Jamario? And you could hear a pin drop, dude. Not one person.
Damn.
They didn't even breathe. They held their breath because they're like, we don't want anything to be misinterpreted as applause.
Yeah.
And then they were like, or Rob Lewis. And they were like 2 people in the back of the room. So Rob won. Now, look, I mean, everybody is fucking pumped. No big deal, right?
Sure.
I would never tell this story just to make fun of him for that. That would be fucked up. The thing that I found funny is, and this is again before we were filming, so there's no video evidence of it. He kind of walks out of the room with his head down. You could tell he's bummed with how it went. And I felt for him. And then the next morning I wake up to a Facebook post, undefeated at Roast Battle. The king is here. I'm going to be the fucking Undertaker of the Roast Battle. Who wants to be my next victim? But all this shit. So I just responded, I'll battle you.
Yeah.
Right. And we got a date. That was my first one.
Fuck. And I'm assuming you won.
Yeah. His streak ended at 1. Yeah.
There was somebody last night. I don't know if you remember. There was, like, one of the battles was, I think it was the second battle of the night. It was really fucking bad, and they both got ripped apart. And they kind of gave it to one of the battlers because it was like, well, she kind of had like a, what those, I forget what you call them, like a give it up for my opponent.
Thank you, so and so.
Yeah, thank you. And she called the dude Jonah Downhill.
Downhill.
That was the only laugh of the entire thing.
Yes,
the entire battle. And so the crowd gives it to her, and I would have been like, all right, thank you. I mean, this girl was arms in the air, celebrating, and it was like, they just got done being like, I guess we'll give it to you. I guess, I
mean, I think that's indicative of like a bigger thing amongst comics where it's like the good comics could go up there and crush in front of 300 people, and they know the 2 people in the room who didn't think they were funny. They know the 2 people that weren't laughing. And a bad comic could go up there and eat shit, and only 2 people think they're funny, and they think that they crush.
Wow, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely think like anybody who, celebrates a win like that is probably, they have some self-inspection to probably do.
It was just funny to me, and then to hear you say that's fucking...
Yeah.
I guess you guys probably see that shit a lot.
Sure, yeah.
100%. So, like, what about, like, your trajectory through Roast Battle? Like, how did you come to be who you are? How did you rack up 48 battles? How many wins do you have? 35 of them?
30. I'm 30, 14, and 4.
Damn.
That's my official
So how did you, become the guy? And were you a part of, this is kind of a bunch of questions. Were you a part of the TV show?
I was on season 2. And I was supposed to be on season 3. We got our battle pulled within 10 minutes after it happened.
Who was it?
I'll tell you that story too if you'd like. Eli Sayers.
The name sounds familiar.
You could do a deep dive on Eli Sayers. That's a very interesting story.
Okay. Well, lay it on me. Fucking just rattle it.
Do you want to just jump ahead to that?
No, well, take it from wherever you want. This is your story.
Yeah, so I start battling end of 2014. 2015, I get really good at it. I start sort of making a name for myself. And this was back when the show was at its peak. Like, you know, every week you would have like Jim Carrey or Dave Chappelle or somebody coming in to judge. Like, it was always all these like big celebrities and shit. And like,
I remember, sorry to interject.
Yeah,
I remember like being very new to comedy, just like kind of dipping my toes into open mics and hearing about that show and being too intimidated to even go.
Yeah,
I
for
would,
sure.
I would convince myself, no, I can't go. I have to work in the morning, and I did that for fucking years. And then
well, the Comedy Store is an intimidating building too.
100%.
Yeah.
Just like walking onto the patio. I'm kind of just now these last few years getting more comfortable just being there and hanging out and showing face and
absolutely
just saying hi to people. You know what I mean? Because it can be a very, what's the right word? Like a turn you away. Like,
and it's not to get off on a tangent, but it's a tough thing for me as the booker too, because like, you know, when we first started, there was just Roast Battle, and now there's these other similar shows, Comic Wars.
That's how I got
No Yours.
Yeah.
And I see these people who only want to do the other shows, and like, I'm trying to find out why, because it's like, I'm scouting. I want to bring in talent. You know what I mean? So I found myself having to reach out to people, and you get some people who you almost have to reach out and be like, hey, I promise we're not scary. Like,
yeah, honestly,
you know,
that's how I felt about you when I first, I would have never even said what's up to you.
Really?
A year ago. Yeah. You're
that's crazy.
I mean, you're a big, stocky, burly, intimidating guy, and you're the fucking commissioner of Roast Battle. I guess there's just a perception that of anything connected to the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
And with Roast Battle in general, just because of the nature of it, that it can be an intimidating thing. But
sure.
You're the nicest fucking guy in the world, and
Thank you.
Everybody involved with Roast Battle has been nothing but kind to me. Moses called me racist just for being from Lancaster, which I still have that chip on my shoulder.
Fair. I believe that was my intro last night. He's from the second most racist city in America.
Yeah. And then it was shout out Boston or some shit.
Yeah, I demand a recount on that, by the way.
You guys want your belt?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so 2015, I start doing the Roast Battle. It's going well. I'm moving up the ladder. Back then, you had one good undercard, and you were immediately thrown into 3-round main events, which really like tested you. It was tough. And but I was winning a lot. I had a really good record. They ran a tournament towards the end of 2015. I got into the tournament. I ended up making the finals of the tournament. So I was on like a little run. And then what happened, well, and I guess this is like the, this is the story of like why Roast Battle is like so important to me. So to backtrack a little bit, I move out to LA. I take a transfer with CVS, and that lasts 3 months. I managed a CVS out in Alhambra.
Oh, wow.
And it was a nightmare. It was awful. And I was like miserable. I got out of there. I worked at a warehouse for like a year. I ended up getting fired from the warehouse. And so at this point, I'm just like Uber driving. I'm just like a full-time Uber driver trying to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do. I'm 32 years old or whatever. And I'm just like, man, it feels like I have the only thing I have is this Roast Battle thing. Right. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? And, my wife, we had got married in 2014, and a few weeks before the wedding, she had a miscarriage.
Oof. Sorry to hear.
Thank you. It was one of those things like she didn't even know she was pregnant. The whole thing lasted like a couple hours. Like it wasn't like we had the baby room decorated. It wasn't any of that, right? Not to say that any of them are good.
Yeah.
And my wife hates when you try to rationalize. Like she's like, no, you can't say that one's easier to deal with than the other. It's like, yeah, you can. Like, honestly, there are ones that are so much worse than what we went through, right? But regardless, she ends up having some sort of like damage to her tubes, and then they tell us like, you're probably not going to be able to get pregnant naturally. I've always wanted to be a father. You're going to have to do IVF, and IVF is $25,000.
Oh.
Back then, I'm not even sure what it is now. So I'm living in LA. Everything's expensive. I'm Uber driving just to make ends meet. I'm like, how are we going to have this kid? You start thinking like, I might have to move back east. I might have to quit comedy. I might have to get a real job. What am I going to do? Right?
Yeah.
So you got this thing lurking because also with women, they're like, well, I have a biological clock, so we can't afford for you to, just do open mics for...
Keep fucking figuring it out. Oh,
Yeah.
I know all about this, brother. I know all about it.
We'll talk off air on this one. So, we're at the end of 2015 now. I got that looming in the background. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm doing the roast battle. I'm Uber driving. And towards the beginning of 2016, there was a comedian, I'm not going to say his name because I feel like then people will like hit him up looking for work or something, but he had been a correspondent on The Daily Show, successful comedian, and he got a gig roasting the NFL owners. So he went to Brian Moses, the host of Roast Battle, and he said, do you have any good roast writers who are also big sports fans? And he said, yeah, talk to Pat Barker. So this guy hits me up and he goes, hey, I need the jokes in 4 days. I only need like 20 to 30 jokes. Now, the one advantage to moving to LA as late as I did was I was able to recognize the lack of opportunities and take any little opportunity seriously. This guy's like, I'll pay you $250. I only need 20 to 30 jokes. And if I had moved here when I was 22, I'd have given him 20 to 30 jokes. Instead, I was like, I'm rapidly running out of time and I need any opportunity I can get. So I'm like, there's 32 NFL teams. I'm going to write 10 jokes per owner. I had 4 days, locked myself in my room, basically. I wrote 322 jokes.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
And they were mostly good, too. There was some trash in there, but like overall.
I mean, to calculate just the time, 320 jokes, a joke a minute, 60.
Yeah, it's about 5.5 hours. But I mean,
It's 5 specials.
it takes, yeah, right? It takes longer than that to write jokes.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was like an all day.
Oh, I'm not
talking
about the time it takes to write it. I'm talking about just the joke itself, the delivery.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
wrote
obviously.
5 specials worth of material in 4 days.
Yeah.
That's insane. And
Yeah.
Tony wants to brag about what Hans Kim's doing? Shut the fuck up, dude.
Oh, no comment. So I send him to this guy and he's just like, he's blown away. And he's like, oh my God, this is great. He's like, you got to come over to my house and we'll go over these. So he throws them up on his TV and he has his laptop and he just starts going through and highlighting ones he likes, which is a nerve-wracking experience.
Yeah. Somebody else killing your babies?
Yeah. And he highlighted like 200 of them. Like the hit rate was incredible, right? And I was
That's
like,
a high shooting
so
percentage.
yeah, dude. So I was like, I was so excited. I was so happy. And he did the gig. And the next day I text him and I'm like, how did it go? And he calls me. And when I saw the phone ring, I'm like, oh, he must have fucking murdered. And he gets on the phone. He's like, I bombed so hard.
No way.
Now, what happened was they didn't know it was a roast.
Oh.
So you get a whole bunch of like old white billionaires and you put them in a room and you're like, this is a dinner to celebrate you guys and tell you how awesome you are. But first, got a comedian to shit on you a little bit. And it's like none of them have a sense of humor. None of them.
Hilarious.
So he goes up there. He got heckled by Jerry Jones in the middle of it. He got to his Jerry Jones chunk and Jerry Jones is standing up in the back. He's like, don't do it. Don't say that shit. Like,
All right. Who's Jerry Jones? It's funny
he's
because
the owner of the Cowboys.
Okay. It sounded familiar. I'm not a big football guy, which is funny because I do edit for the NFL.
Do you really?
I,
Hilarious.
like a company that's contracted through the NFL for like gaming.
Okay.
I have no idea who the fuck anybody. I have to Google every single player.
Jerry Jones is like the most famous owner in the league.
He's not the guy with the bowl cut. That's the Raiders guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Al Davis's kid. Mark Davis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Jerry Jones the old white guy? I mean,
They're all the old white guy. They're all the old white guy. But yes.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. So Jerry Jones stands up.
He's getting heckled by Jerry Jones. He's bombing. There was one joke that I fought so hard to have in there, and he's like, I can't do that. It's too mean. And I was like, it's not mean. It's perfect. You have to do it. And he did it. And people came up to him afterwards, and they were like, why did you say that? That was so mean. And I thought, coming from the roast battle world where we say really fucked up shit,
Yeah.
I thought it was so tame. The joke was the owner of the Chicago Bears was a 92-year-old woman. And the joke was Virginia Hallis McCaskey is here. Virginia has a long history with the Bears. She was right next to them when they were loaded onto Noah's Ark. Just like pretty silly.
Cute.
Right. I thought cute. And people were like, how dare you say that about her? Like they were offended. They were upset. And I was so proud of myself for writing such a friendly kind of joke that nobody could dislike, and little did I know. But anyway, so the guy bombs, but he was like still really impressed with the work. So he was like, "Can you start coming over a couple days a week and be my writer's assistant, and I'll pay you whatever," right? So I would go over his house. He had different projects in the work, and I would just kind of help him with those. A couple months later, guys that he had worked with on The Daily Show were moving to LA to spearhead the new show with Bill Simmons on HBO. Bill Simmons is another sports guy, famous like journalist, podcaster kind of guy.
Is he the one with the googly eye?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Black guy?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No, you're thinking of Stuart Scott.
That's who I'm thinking
he's
of.
rest in peace, Stuart Scott.
Oh, I didn't even know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, Bill, his eyes are fine. But so he was one of the first guys who was really big in the podcast world. And he's doing this show on HBO. And the guy that I had been working for goes out to dinner with his old buddies. And they're like, "Do you know any sports writers who are kind of like under the radar?" And I don't have an agent or a manager. I got nothing. Right. So he goes, "Oh, talk to Pat Barker." So these guys hit me up and they're like, "Hey, would you submit a packet for this job?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I work hard on the packet. And then they're like, come in for an interview. So now I have an interview over at Sunset Gower Studios for a TV writing job. I've never written for TV. I have absolutely no resume to speak of, right? So I'm thinking, I'm like, what do you even put on your, because I wanted to show up with like a resume. And I put roast battle. It was one of the things. The night before the interview, I'm battling at the Comedy Store against Dan Nolan. Do you know Dan?
Oh, yeah.
Dan.
I love Dan Nolan. He's so fucking funny, dude.
Monster.
Yeah.
He's so funny.
Brilliant joke writer.
Such a great joke writer. And I had just gone on this run. I was winning a whole lot, and I battled Dan, and we had a good battle. And it comes down to the third round, comes down to the last joke. And nobody had ever done a miscarriage joke before. He was the first one.
I've seen this clip before.
You've seen the clip.
I know the joke. You'd have to remind it, but when you first mentioned it, the miscarriage, that's what I thought of.
When Pat lost his child to a miscarriage last year, there was nothing funny about it, which is how Pat knew he was the father.
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect
Zero
joke.
fat.
The room explodes. I had to tell a joke after that, and I was just like, I am fucked.
I think that was my introduction to Roast Battle, was seeing that on Periscope or something.
Yeah. And what a great introduction. It's a perfect joke. It encapsulates everything I love about the Roast Battle, where we can be vulnerable and have our stuff like, we found out miscarriage is a thing that like a lot of people hide. They're ashamed of it or something like that. That was never our goal. My wife and I, we always wanted to be like upfront with it because I had so many people after we came public with it who were hitting me up like, "Yo, my wife and I went through the same thing." It's a very, very common thing.
Oh, wow.
So even with the Roast Battle, I'm like, to me, it's, it's empowering to be like, yeah, this is going on and I'm not ashamed of it or whatever. And It's free game. So he made a fucking ridiculously good joke, right? So I lose the battle. I go home, go to sleep. I wake up in the morning to get ready for this interview. And my wife is already up. And she goes, "How was the battle last night?" And I'm like, "Oh, it was great." I was like, she's like, "Did you win?" I was like, "No, I lost." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "No, he had this killer joke in the third." Now, this was the moment. You ever hear Chappelle talk about the Michael Richards thing?
Yes.
And he goes, "That was the moment I realized I was like 90% comedian and 10% black guy."
Yeah.
Because like the black side of me was like, "How dare you?" And the comic side of me was like, "Damn, Kramer's having a rough set."
Yeah, had a rough set.
Yeah. This was the moment I realized I was more of a comedian than a husband, because she was like, "What was the joke?" And I didn't even hesitate. I told her the joke. And she started choking up. Like she was about to cry. And I was like, "Do you not get it?" It's like, I was like, "It's such a good joke." She did not appreciate it nearly as much as I did. So I'm like, all right, well, I already made my wife cry. Now let me go bomb this fucking interview, right?
So whirlwind 48 hours.
Yeah, so I go into the studios and I'm sitting down with the showrunner and the head writer and we're talking and everything, and they're asking me, how I know the guy who recommended me, and we're going through that, and our connection is through Roast Battle. So naturally, there's like a lot of like, what is this Roast Battle? What is this, right? And I don't have anything else to talk about, so I'm like, sure, let's do it. So one of them was like, have you ever had somebody say something to you that was like really fucked up? I'm like, funny you should ask. Like 12 hours ago. Yeah. I was like, you guys have to promise you won't get offended. And they were like, no, we're cool. We're cool. And I was like, all right. So I tell them the joke. They think it's hilarious. One of them leaves, brings in Bill, who's the host of the show. And they're like, Bill, you're going to love this. This guy, you got to tell him what. So I start talking to Bill about Roast Battle. And like, I tell him the joke and he almost falls out of his chair. Like he's like, oh my God, that's incredible. So we're bonding over this like Roast Battle thing. And we're in the middle of the interview. And just out of nowhere, Bill's like, I like this guy. Can we hire him? The host of the show says
Holy
that.
shit, that would make my stomach drop.
Which I found out later from the showrunner. He was like, yeah, we specifically told him not to do that in any interviews because it backs us into a corner. Because what are they going to do? They were like, yeah, let's hire him. So all of a sudden, I went from like scraping by on the Uber driver money to making the Writers Guild minimum, which was at the time $3,700 a week.
Oh man, that's great.
For this show that was going to run 20 episodes and have like a 2-month like lead up, which gave us the money to pay for the IVF. It took first try.
Holy shit.
I had my son. That's why I think some people are like, oh, you're still doing that Roast Battle thing? It's like, yeah, dude, like without that show, I wouldn't have my son. That's not even like hyperbole to say that. I might have a completely different son in a completely different world where I'm living in Philly and managing a Walgreens, but I wouldn't have my life I have now or my son.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's why I keep putting in work on the show. I still love it, but...
I mean, that is unreal synchronicity. Like, and the conversation that led to this great camaraderie in the room is about a joke about your miscarriage.
Yeah.
That's fucking incredible.
And the miscarriage was the reason we needed IVF, and the miscarriage is the reason I might have gotten the job regardless, but
Sure.
Who knows? It certainly helped. The miscarriage is the reason we needed the IVF. The miscarriage joke is the reason I got the job that paid for the IVF.
But I mean, it's all in that fucking blender. That's incredible.
It's insane. It's insane.
Have you? I'm sure you and Dan have had this conversation a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I told him like the next day, I was like, dude, thank you. Thank you for saying that about this tragedy in my life. Because it just got me a job I desperately needed.
Not that his joke got you the job, but I mean, it led to them getting to see your personality and all these great things that you need to get a job like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible, dude.
It was, yeah, it's wild to like go back and think about.
That's awesome. So you're working on that show and you continue doing Roast Battle. Is that where you want to wrap that story?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to that story. Is that not good enough?
No. I just
Jesus
I don't
Christ.
want to fucking cut you off because we got to get into the Roast Battle League and then,
So
you know.
I'll fast forward a little bit. So the show only lasted one season. It got canceled. It wasn't very good. Not my fault, but maybe a little bit.
The show you were working on.
Yeah. But it gave me the money to pay for the IVF.
Beautiful.
And whatever. I kept doing Roast Battle. It was going really well. Later that year, so this is a fun story too. I hope we have time for me to say all this shit.
You got all the time in the world.
I love that.
That hard drive can hold 8 hours.
I'll cut it off at 7.5.
All right, cool.
So this is really funny too. So the show starts in June. By like July, you're like, this is not going well. You could tell, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't have a good feeling about where we're at with this show. But on the contrary, I'm doing all this Roast Battle stuff. It's going really well, and there's rumblings of Roast Battle coming back for season 2 on Comedy Central. So towards the beginning of November or October, something like that, I get contacted by Comedy Central. They're like, hey, do you want to do the Road to Roast Battle regional episode we're filming at the Comedy Store? And I was like, yeah, of course.
I have a question. What does a contact from Comedy Central look like? Email, phone call, text?
I don't even remember at this point. I'm not sure. I think I got called.
You got a phone call?
I think I got a phone call.
That's nice. So
Yeah.
somebody in your circle had to give your phone number to Comedy Central.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I get the call or the email, whatever it was. They're like, do you want to do this thing? I'm like, yeah, of course. Because I came up at a time like pre-TikTok. Like the only goal was to get on TV.
Yeah.
They're like, you get on TV, you have it made.
And Comedy Central.
Yeah, and it turns out I got on TV at the exact time where people were like, oh, we don't fuck with TV anymore. We
Or
stopped
Comedy
that.
Central.
Like, yeah, exactly. They're like, yeah, do you have anything on Snapchat? And it's like, God damn it, dude. It took me 13 years to get this and nobody cares. So I get the call. I'm preparing for the battle. It's maybe like a week before the battle, and they release a thing on Deadline. I think it's Deadline or Inside Hollywood, one of those things. And it's like, Roast Battle announces season 2 lineup, right? And my name is in there. So it's a cool thing. You
Very
can put a link on your socials and be like, look at that. I'm going to be on TV, blah, 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 blah. So I'm all proud of myself. I post the link everywhere, whatever. 10 minutes after the article drops, because I'm at work at this point. I'm at the studio. They call an all-staff meeting. So 10 minutes after this article drops, I go in for the staff meeting, and they're like, hey, we got canceled.
Your TV show.
My TV show.
Oof.
So I'm like, damn, this is quite the day. Well, I guess, what I'm guessing is those websites, the deadlines and all that, got wind of the fact we were going to be canceled. They were going to publish it. They said, hey, let us meet with the staff first. As soon as we're done, we'll let you know, and then you can publish it. Because within 5 minutes of the meeting ending, that was the big story all of a sudden. And it was a big story because HBO had bought 3 seasons of this show sight unseen based on Bill's popularity as a podcaster. Uh-huh. So for them to cancel it after 1 when they had already paid him a lot of money was like noteworthy.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So now Deadline puts a breaking news banner on the top of their website. So now I got people clicking on the link where I'm like, hey, check out my good news. And the very first thing that pops up is Any Given Wednesday canceled, which was the show I was working on. So I had people like hitting me up like, yo, did you mean to say good news when you posted that? I'm like, yeah, no, it's complicated.
This big anti-comedy troll.
Yeah, exactly. So in the same way you had the synchronicity in the first story, you had a little bit of like the reverse there.
Yeah.
It's very weird how that stuff happens. But so I kept doing the show. I did season 2 on TV. Which now the footage doesn't exist anywhere because Chris D'Elia was one of the judges. So my TV debut is just lost forever.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's the reason they pulled the one with you and Eli?
No. So that was me versus Robin Tran season 2.
Oh, okay.
So that's gone because of Chris D'Elia. Fast forward to season 3. Eli was the New York champion. They were doing Roast Masters at the Stand. They were posting the videos on YouTube. He was the fucking guy out there. And we had done a few LA versus New York crossover
That
events.
was the first little bit of like you said, crossover between Roast Battle and whatever they were doing.
Yeah, it all started season 2 when they announced the people who were going to be on the main tournament on Comedy Central, and the New York guys felt slighted. They felt like LA got more love in that, and they felt like, LA wasn't real battlers. They're the real writers. We're just like theatrical or whatever.
Or the act out guys.
Out guys. Yeah, it's an East Coast, West Coast kind of mentality thing. So Eli went out and called out like the LA battlers, like on stage at the Stand. And within 24 hours, we had booked 3 plane tickets for myself, Keith Carey, and Alex Hooper to go over to New York to battle 3 of their best guys at the Stand. So they did Eli versus Alex Hooper. They were the respective champions at the time. I battled someone named Christy Cello, and Keith battled Scott Chaplin. Keith and I won. So we got 2 out of 3 on the road, which was really cool. Eli won his battle. A couple months later, 4 of their guys flew out and we did like a rematch at the Comedy Store. We had like some momentum going, and it was building to me versus Eli. And like, I wanted to do it in New York, just like on some love of the game shit. I don't care.
In your barn?
Yeah, I want to take the show on the road and fucking, I want to beat you in your own house. I honestly believed, I was like, this is the best in the world right now. And all his videos are still on YouTube. You can go back and watch him. He's outstanding. But then I had Moses in my ear like, Comedy Central's starting to talk about season 3. They might want to do you versus Eli, blah, 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 blah. And me, I'm like, dude, fuck Comedy Central. I want to do it, I want to do the real, the real shit,
Some
the underground
shit.
Yeah, and he's like, shut up, dude. What are you doing? Do it on TV. So finally season 3 rolls around. They book me versus Eli. It's going to be like best in LA versus best in New York. That's how they're like billing it. But my thing was, I still wanted to do the real deal. So I was like, we agreed, no matter what happens out there, we're doing a 3-round rematch for the title. Like, we're doing the real thing. This is the All-Star game. The other one will be the Super Bowl, right? We're on TV. We're just going to go out and have fun. It's going to be great. We're just going to have fun. And that was how I approached the battle. I brought my son out on stage. I was wearing a #1 dad shirt. And I brought my son out on stage. I held him up like the fucking Lion King.
This was for the Comedy Central.
This was for
I've
Comedy
seen
Central.
that. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, yeah. So we were scheduled to be on TV. They would tape 3 battles at a time, 2 for TV, and then 1 was a digital exclusive. The digital exclusive for our episode was supposed to be Robin Tran versus Alex DeWong. They went out and crushed. They had a great battle. Then Eli and I go out. Now, I guess to rewind a little bit, the day of the show, he was panicking so hard. He was like freaking out. And I was super relaxed. I had my kid in the green room and I'm just like, dude, life is good. We're about to be on TV. Like, we're just going to have fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. And then like, he found out my kid was going to be like on the show. I was bringing my son out, which I was trying to keep a secret. I was like, because he's going to write 5 jokes and they're going to seem like off the top rebuttals and he's going to bury me immediately. And I told him, I was like, dude, we're just going to have fun. Like, this doesn't matter, which is a weird thing to say about TV. But I was like, the real one is the rematch. Like, this doesn't matter. So we go out there and he was like freaking out. He was panicking. I found out years later from an episode, he was on Ari Shaffir's Skeptic Tank, and he talked about Eli's a very interesting guy with a weird sort of, he was brought up Mennonite in Alabama, and he has like OCD, and his parents like led him to believe that he was like possessed by a demon or something. There's all sorts of crazy
Holy shit.
So what happened was, and I didn't know this at the time, he relapsed the night before the battle. He started so he's in the hotel in LA, staying up all night, washing his hands like 1,000 times and like rocking back and forth and like crazy. I don't want to misrepresent what he was doing. I'm paraphrasing, but that's a great episode of Skeptic Tank. If you ever listen to it, it's very, it's enthralling, kind of like what was going on in his head. And I had no idea. I just thought he was nervous because we were going to be on TV, which is understandable. So I go out there, I'm totally relaxed, and we had to send our jokes to Comedy Central the day before. They wanted to make sure, and I had one joke where they were like, we would prefer that you didn't do this one. It was a little bit like, it was harsh.
Do you remember it?
It was some reference to, he looked just like one of the recent mass shooters. And I think it specifically referenced a mass shooting because he looked just like the guy.
Was it what was that fucking kid's name? Because now I can kind of picture Eli in my head now. Was it the dude that again, the bowl cut shooter who shot up a church?
Yes. Okay, yes. Yeah. So the joke was, Eli, is very popular on YouTube. I'm butchering the setup, but it was something about, he has a lot of clips online, but his favorite clip is the one he unloaded into that black church and whatever, which is, I totally get why Comedy Central's like,
yeah, we can't have that.
So I was like, all right, I'll save that one for the next battle. Otherwise, they were like, yeah, you're good. And I sent them everything. I was like, these are my 5 jokes. These are all the rebuttals I'm thinking about using. This is my quadruple overtime. I was like, this is everything. Mm-hmm. And I assume he did the same. So we went out there. I bring out my kid. It's this great moment. I hold him up. Everything's great. And then he did all miscarriage jokes. Like, not only for his 5 turns, but he also had like miscarriage rebuttals. He did like 9 miscarriage jokes, it felt like.
Doing that thing of like, there can be too many of one jokes.
For sure.
And that can hit against you. But when you almost double down and you keep going, it's almost like things come full circle and you get your flowers for sticking with it. Was that like what he was going for?
I think that's what he was going for. It's like that the Family Guy bit where he like hurts his ankle and he's like, and they keep it going for so long that you're like, this is funny, and then it's not funny, and then all right, it's funny again.
It's funny, yeah.
So I think that's what he was trying to do, but it was not working.
Oof.
It was not working, and he bombed a couple, and I had a couple of like rebuttals for in case he bombs. I even had one where it's like, okay, if he bombs 2 jokes in a row, I had like a World Trade Center thing, like line up 2 things back to back and watch them collapse or something like that. And like, I was prepared for everything.
Yeah.
And like, it was just, everything went perfectly. And I won the battle, and I get off stage, and within 2 minutes, I'm being told, hey, your battle is going to digital. They're going to replace it with Robin and Alex. Now, there's some degree of discrepancy here, because what I'm hearing is they were uncomfortable with his jokes, all the miscarriage shit. He told me that he's like, no, I sent them everything and they approved it. It's possible you send in 50 jokes and they're like, oh yeah, these are all fine in a vacuum, but they didn't think he would do all of the miscarriage ones back. It's also possible they said it's fine, and then they didn't work in the room, and they were like, all right, it's just not a good look. So we got like relegated to digital, which in the long run was actually better. I think more people have seen it on YouTube than ever would on
That's probably how
Comedy
I saw
Central.
it, yeah.
But so the funny part about that was at the end of the episode, you're supposed to go out. The two people who won on the episode are supposed to go out and receive like medals, right? So I'm told, hey, your battle is going to digital and being replaced with this other battle. So I'm going through that. Then I have a stagehand who hasn't been informed yet, who's like, hey, you got to go out for the medal ceremony. I'm like, I don't think I do. Like, can you check on this? And he's like, yeah, you were in the TV battle. I'm like, I don't think it's going on TV. And he was like, you just got to get out there. So I walked out there. I stood next to Yamanika Saunders, who had won the other episode. And I just stood out there waiting to get pulled off stage because I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And I just go out there and like they're getting ready to roll the cameras. And I'm just like, this fucking sucks, dude. I'm about to get pulled off of this
And
motherfucker.
this was at the House of Blues, right?
No, season two was House of Blues. This was at the Fonda.
Oh, okay.
Fonda Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. And beautiful theater, you know, probably like 500 to 1,000 people in there, and like everybody's cheering, and I'm on stage like, it's a nightmare. And then, of course, like the stagehand just comes up and sort of like grabs me by the shoulders and like,
And you're like, yep.
yeah, I'm like Homer Simpson fading into the fucking shrubbery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why. So my season 2 battle, it doesn't exist because of Chris D'Elia. My season 3 battle doesn't exist because my opponent did 10 miscarriage jokes in a 5-joke battle. I won both battles, but at what cost? You know?
Yeah. Nobody will know about it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
If you, what's the saying? If a tree falls in the wood and nobody hears it.
That's right. If there's 10 miscarriage jokes in the woods and no one's there to hear them,
is there even
do
a
they make a
fetus?
sound? Yeah.
So from there,
Yeah.
you continue doing roast battle.
Yeah, I keep doing it. It doesn't get picked up for a season 4.
Before we get into that, what happened with the real battle between you and Eli?
Oh,
The
it never
championship
happened.
battle.
So after the battle ended, that was when I realized that something was really wrong with kind of like his mentality. And he was just like, and I didn't know the extent of it until that Ari Shaffir podcast, but he was just like, yeah, I'm done. I'm never battling again. And the fucked up thing was I had a couple jokes in the battle where like my rebuttals hit so hard that I pulled back and didn't do my jokes because I was like, I'll save these for this. I didn't do good jokes on TV because I was saving them for a thing that 100 people would see.
Yeah.
And then 100 people didn't even see that. And he was just like, I'm done. And he has disappeared almost entirely from like the public profile. Like he doesn't do comedy. He never battled again. It's like a Bobby Fischer situation, man. We still get people commenting on the roast battle, like
Yeah, he's
YouTube
out there
and shit.
roasting somebody in Central Park right now.
Yeah.
At a table.
Under a different name, but people are still commenting like, whatever happened to Eli Sayers?
Oh shit.
I've had fans DM me and be like, is he okay? And I'm like, I don't know. I hope so.
Damn. All right, well, we hope he is.
Yeah, hope so. I hold no, and that's the thing. Like Sam Morrill asked me at the Comedy Store a couple nights later because he had battled also on that taping, and he was like, "Are you mad at Eli?" And my wife she still is not happy with him. She's like, you know, because she had to sit there and listen to it, and I got pulled off TV and all
Maybe
this.
she knows where Eli went.
Yeah, exactly. He's next to John Benet Ramsey somewhere. No, but I was never mad. It's like I said to Sam. He was like, "Are you mad at Eli?" I'm like, "Nah, he's a comic and he picked a bad set list."
Yeah.
Like it happened. We went to the Dodgers game the next night. You know what I mean? Like there's no ill will from me at all. I hope the guy's good. I would love to see him get back into battling, but more than anything, I just hope he's okay.
Sure.
So yeah, we never did the rematch. Then we didn't get picked up for season 4 at Comedy Central. I felt like for a couple years, because that was 2018, we were kind of just going through the motions. Then the pandemic hit, and I was convinced the show would not come back from the pandemic. I think everybody was. I think everybody was like, that seems like a natural conclusion to this story.
I thought it was going to end too. Because I remember just watching Roast Battle back then, and you guys were doing them in the main room that was empty, and only X amount of people were allowed inside the room at the time. The battlers had to stand 20 feet apart. It was a little weird, right?
Yeah. Well, before that, they were even doing these ones, and this was the only, I love Roast Battle, and I'll support anything. This was the only thing I didn't get on board with at all. They were filming battles in a room like this with no crowd. and Jeff Ross was judging them via like Zoom.
I think I kind of remember that.
And they were like, do you want to do one of these? And I was like, I would rather just get COVID and die. Like, that sounds fucking awful. Why would I? No crowd?
Yeah.
So it was a dark kind of time. And we came back from that and we were trying to figure out what the next thing was. And, you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And there were roast battles popping up everywhere. I mean, for the longest time, it was just LA, New York, and London were the only ones that we were really aware of. And next thing you know, every city has a roast battle. And you can't trademark the act of two people making fun of each other.
Right.
So there's no legal recourse you can have, right? So we started talking about what if we took the best of the best and made it into like a league. We started having those conversations. And then, you know, one day towards the beginning of 2022, Brian Moses said to me, he goes, all right, I want you to do it. I want you to make the Roast Battle League. And I was like, cool, what's my budget? And he was like, $0. And I was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes like, how do you have a sports league how do you run the NBA if you can't afford to fly the Bulls to Milwaukee to play the Bucks?
Right.
Okay, what do you do? So, you know, we had to get creative with it. We had to come up with like, basically what happens now is everybody runs their own roast battle. It's like local versus local. And then
franchised out a little bit.
Kind of, yeah. And then they get the ability. A lot of them were named other things, like Chicago was Sticks and Stones. The Bay Area was Verbal Insults, which is terrible.
That's the ugliest thing I've ever heard. And my name's Channing Apodaca.
Dude, the Denver one was maybe the worst. It was like the Cruelty Comedy Carnage Crusade or something. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, that's fucking terrible. Like, Comic Wars is a good one. It's like, don't reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah. I mean, that's about as like just off-brand as you can get.
Yeah.
Comedy cruise, that sounds like something that would happen on a cruise ship, you know?
It was so bad. But we gave them the ability, like, okay, you can call yourself Roast Battle Denver, you call yourself Roast Battle Chicago, you'll be part of this league, you know, whatever. And the way we did the standings was every week, cities would have to submit their best battle. And we just started RBL Weekly, which is a podcast where we go through and we rank the top 5 battles of the week. If you have the number 1 battle, your city earns 5 points, number 4, 2, 4 points, so forth and so on. And then we put together standings. And then the idea was, hey, can we budget enough money where at the end of this season, we take the top 2 U.S. cities, we take the top 2 international ones, we take the MVP battler from each of those cities, and we fly them out to a neutral location and do a one-night 4-person tournament.
Nice.
And crown a world champion. And it seemed really ambitious, and we were able to pull it off. January 31st in Denver, we're doing the first ever world championship. LA versus New York on one side of the bracket, London versus Scotland on the other. And then the 2 winners will face off for the title.
And they have to do that. So you have to prepare for your first battle and then your potential second battle. So you're technically writing 3 battles.
3 battles. Yeah.
That's pretty nuts.
So what we're going to do is like the 2 losers will also battle, I guess, for like 3rd place or whatever. But mainly it's just because,
battle.
Yeah, you wrote all this material.
Right.
Like, why not
Let's put it the fuck out there because it's not going to go anywhere.
Right. So imagine preparing for 3 battles against 3 of the greatest battlers like on the planet. Like, it's a daunting. I wouldn't want to do it. It sounds awful, frankly.
That's so you said it was at Denver Comedy Works,
Denver Improv.
Denver Improv.
Yes.
January 31st, the World Series of Roast Battle.
Yeah.
You guys have Ryan Neeson representing LA.
Yep.
Who else you got?
John Ajoda from New York, Shalaka Karup, who is the league MVP. She's from London. She's a fucking, my God, dude.
Is she the favorite?
She battles so much. She won 14 battles between March and November. The season ran from 8 months, and she won 14 battles in 8 months.
So she was basically the one lifting London up.
She did a lot to sort of carry. Yeah, she went 14-2, I think. A lot of her battles made the podcast. She's very, very funny. And then a guy named Ryan Cullen from Scotland, which is my favorite city. The Scottish people, the degree of difficulty in 2 ways. Number one, they do 5 jokes apiece. They do 5 turns apiece, but in each turn they do like 4 jokes. So they're doing 20 jokes per battle, and everybody looks the same. You can't do any racial jokes because everybody's white.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Rosy-cheeked white people.
They're all just the same fucking guy. So you can't do any visual jokes. So they really like dig deep and like get in their joke writing bag. It's very impressive.
That's my favorite type of roast joke, though, is something personal.
Me too.
With these great tie lines. That's why like the miscarriage joke, to harken back to it, is like such a fucking great joke.
Yeah.
It ties in like calling you not funny, which is not true, but with some like traumatic life experience. Perfect joke.
Yeah, it brought it back. It made me the butt of the joke. It used that as a vehicle to get to like Pat's not funny. Like it's perfect. I love that shit too. I know there's some other people who just want to do like you look like such and such. Like that's cool too. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean that's kind of like the story of how the Roast Battle League was formed, and you know now here we are, 12 cities. We're going to 16. We'll be announcing those in the middle of February. We are running monthly at the Mothership down in Austin, which has been a really great deal for us. Getting to go down there every month and do that, which is great. We're going to do Roast Fest 2, which is Tokyo versus LA later this year. I got to go out to Tokyo and battle.
That's amazing.
Which was incredible. Like Tokyo was a bucket list place for me, and I just never thought I would have.
And this little belly room show took you there.
Yeah.
That is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So we got just a lot of cool stuff going on. It's fun. It's exciting to be a part of.
That's amazing. So where are people able to find the World Championship? Where will they be able to watch or listen to that?
So that's a great question. And I wish I had a great answer for you. I mean, the one thing I could say is you can watch it at the Denver Improv.
Okay.
If you live near there, please come out and buy tickets. We would appreciate it. But, you know, we have had a lot of interest because, you know, we were like, oh, we'll film it. We're flying a few people out to film it, high quality. We'll put it out on YouTube a month later. Now we have people, you know, hitting the comments and being like, when can I want to watch it that night?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, we're doing this thing like a sports league. You wouldn't tell somebody they can only watch the Super Bowl a month after it happens, right? So we are working on a way to get a solution where everybody can watch it for free, live. People have volunteered. They're like, oh, do pay-per-view. I'll pay for it. I don't want anybody to have to pay for the first one, especially since like I'm not an expert in audio video at all, and I can't guarantee that the quality will be up to their standards or whatever. I'm big on under promising and over delivering. So I wouldn't want anybody to have to pay and then be like, oh, the audio wasn't clear or whatever, right?
Yeah, I want my $10 back.
Exactly. Which the YouTube comments are very heavily leaned toward. People obsess over the sound. Shit that sounds fine to me. They're
sound is the most important part.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It sounds fine to me, and people will be like, you can't understand a single joke. So we've really had to work hard on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, just knowing that those are the standards for a lot of people, we're going to give it to them for free so they can't complain. They will anyway, but they shouldn't. Whether that happens on Instagram Live or YouTube Live, we're still figuring all that out. What I would say is follow me on Instagram. You can follow at Roast Battle too, but follow at RBL Commish, which is my Instagram that's specifically for Roast Battle stuff. And I will make sure everybody knows how they can see it.
Sweet. Fuck yeah. At RBL Commish on Instagram for the World Series. And then all those new cities that are popping up, the 16 cities that you mentioned that are to be announced. I'm guessing you're going to announce those on that same page.
Yeah. If you're interested in the league, that is the place to follow right now. We're working on. It's so funny how it's like 2024, and it's like we're working on getting a website together. Like it's hilarious.
You can have a website build you a website now.
I know.
That's how far advanced we are.
I know, and we're over here like logging on to fucking GeoCities or whatever, trying to build the thing. But
roastbattle.tk.
Yeah, exactly. We have a Tumblr account. No, but for now, I would say that's probably the most accurate way. I try to update as much as I can. I really want to. My thing, more than having like 100 million fans or whatever, I just want to foster a community of people who really, really like this shit.
Yeah.
And even the podcast we do, RBL Weekly, I would encourage people to watch that. We're watching battles, but a lot of that is like really kind of nerding out about the stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd rather have a smaller group of people who are really like into it. So yeah, if you've never seen Roast Battle, go to the YouTube, check them out. We're releasing a podcast every Tuesday. We're releasing a full episode from either Jam in the Van or the Belly Room or the Mothership every Thursday. We're constantly releasing content, and yeah, that's pretty much everything.
Awesome. Pat Barker, thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate
you for
it.
coming in. Guys, check out all those socials. If you've never seen a roast battle, they're very fun shows. Check it out. Peace.
I'm all ears.
I'm all ears.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. The show's artwork done by the amazing Clay Morrell and the theme song by the one and only B-Wood.